Welcome to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Kim is a psychotherapist and executive director of ICU Talks, a mental health speaking ministry. This is a podcast about how to flip your lid and learning how to reconnect to who you really are.
All right, everybody. Thank you, audience, for being here. Without you, this doesn't matter. I just want to be really clear with y'all. I'm excited about who we're interviewing today. And this is Dr. Chuck DeGroat. I'm a fan of his. I've gotten to know him through his work, and people have come into my office before as a therapist, handed me books of his, and he just has a huge influence on a lot of people. So I know you, hearing this, will be influenced and impacted as well. So, Dr. Chuck, welcome.
Well, it's really good to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we'll just jump in there. Tell us a little bit about what's on your heart, about what flipped your lid, and what measures you've taken to reconnect to who you really are.
Yeah. Can I have like 25 things that
Right. That's right. We got all the time in the world. Go.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna offer two brief ones. One was pretty early on when I was a seminary student, and I had a counseling professor. I was not at all into counseling, but this professor sat with me and kind of read what was going on and said, Chuck, if you don't do your work now, you will be dangerous to the church. And you're probably already dangerous to your wife.
Wow.
And that flipped my lid.
Yeah.
I think a second one was about 8 or 9 years after I had a really hard ending at a church where I was serving. I was at another church serving, and I was working really hard to perform and to perfect everything. You know, I was just trying to do it all so well and not giving myself time, space, resources to reconnect. And I ended up in a hospital in Mexico in emergency surgery, had my gallbladder out, but my system was septic. And what I realized, you know, the saying, the body keeps the score,
Yes.
Vander Koch saying, what I realized was that I was a therapist. I was leading spiritual retreats, and I had been ignoring an inner conversation and really messages from my body over the course of years. And that was about, that was probably 11 or 12 years ago now. And so, and I could talk about many more, as you probably could too, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love the conversation that's even right in front of us right now of just the definition of danger that your professor brought to you, of saying that you're a danger, will be a danger to the church, and are we a danger possibly to your wife, and then for your body to erupt and show you've been a danger to yourself in a sense.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I think these are graces, but like in the rear view mirror, in the moment, it doesn't feel like that. In the moment, it feels pretty overwhelming and disruptive, right? But you look back and it's like, wow, if I would have kept going in the way that I was going back in whenever it was 2011, 2010, 2011, that would have been a massive problem for me, for my family, for our ministry. Yeah. So,
So let's jump into this a little bit. So tell me, because you're an Enneagram 4, right?
That's right.
And I'm married to a 4. So y'all are the second best number. Yeah.
That's great.
You're half of me. So that's
right.
That's right. So I love 4s, but just to be in the space you're in and coming from a place of a 4, being a therapist, being a spiritual director, talking about narcissism, all of that from the space of a 4 is very interesting. So I'll tell you, as an 8, I don't have a chance of compassion fatigue because I don't feel anything. All right. And as a 4, to be in the position and help the people you've helped, like, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, you know this, as 4s, we feel a lot. And I would say that I was a highly sensitive child. I'm a highly sensitive person. If you know that category of high sensitivity.
Yes.
And so, which has been seen to be a trait, not a product of our, our upbringing or anything like that, that I'm mindful that I feel things at a deep level. And that can lead to compassion fatigue. At the same time, for those of your listeners who know the Enneagram, a number of us who are into this have learned a lot from Claudia Naranjo, Beatrice Chestnut, and others who talk about subtypes. And I'm a
Yep.
self-pres subtype, which is to say, I've done a pretty good job over the years at uh, uh, shoving some of that emotion into the dungeon of my psyche.
Mm.
We would be considered the counter type of the four,
Yes.
the self-pres,
Yeah.
which is to say we're not going to show up as quite as emotional or aware of our feelings. And so I live this kind of contradiction or paradox
Mm.
internally. I can feel it sometimes.
Mm.
And so I don't know, that probably has helped me in some respects do the work that I do, because I have
Mm.
sat in the chair as a pastor, as a therapist, as a spiritual director, and now over 25 years listened to stories, and particularly in the realm of abuse, women that I've worked with since the late 1990s. You can't help but take that home with you. And we therapists have to do a lot of work around what we carry with us, so that
Mhm.
at the end of the day or at the end of a session, we can leave open-handed, which is to
Mhm.
say, like, we can surrender,
Mhm.
which is become an important part of the work for me. I can't save someone. I can't fix someone. I can think about it all I want after a session, but
Mhm.
there's nothing in
Mhm.
my thinking about it that is going to fix. I'm going to have to wait until our next time together. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting experience being a four doing this kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you working with people who've been abused, particularly women, but not that it's restricted
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
gender, is that how you got into your curiosity about narcissism and narcissism in the church?
Yeah. So, yeah, it all began in the late 90s as a pastor, particularly talking to women, sitting with women who were in abusive relationships, didn't really know it. I didn't know a ton about this stuff back then myself.
Mm.
And so I was sort of learning on the go as a brand new pastor, a brand new therapist, and trying to find literature on abuse, on emotional abuse. That was kind of a newer topic, and there was not a lot published. And so so there was that piece, and then beginning to do assessment work for pastors and church planners, and the category of narcissism sort of being raised to the fore through my assessment work.
Mm.
I began using a tool called the Milan Clinical Multi-Axial Inventory,
Right.
and noticing that the vast majority of pastors were elevated on the cluster B spectrum
Mhm.
of disorders, personality disorders, which includes narcissism and histrionic personality and turbulent and histrionic. And
Mhm.
but the large majority of those were elevated on the narcissistic spectrum. Not to say that they were all narcissistic personality disorder,
Right.
but on the spectrum, which isn't in and of itself a bad thing, but was at least back in the early 2000s when I started doing this work, raised some curiosity, and so I began studying this in earnest, and of
Mhm.
course, many years later, published on it.
Mhm. Well, and so, I think we believe that 3, 7, and 8s, probably mainly 3 and 8s would be the narcissists, and they are more likely to be in the pulpit, to be a pastor
Mm,
kinda thing. So but one of the worst narcissists I've sat with was a 9.
yeah,
And so even
yeah,
understanding that, and that's part of why I think your book is so powerful, is
yeah,
it's knowing what it looks like. And there's
yeah.
there's several types of different narcissism. I was raised by a vulnerable narcissist, and
Yes,
it's harder to pick up on and see what's happening
yes,
to you.
yeah,
But still,
yeah,
it can be, and that's part of why your book is so powerful. It
yeah.
is within each number.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So as a four, it might not look as grandiose, but it can look kind of
Mhm.
sticky and self-pitying and
Mhm.
victimizing, and you're not doing enough, and you don't think I'm a, and so the pull and the dependency and the demands can look very different.
Mhm.
You named a distinction. There's overt narcissism and what some call vulnerable narcissism, others call covert narcissism,
Mhm.
and you'll see a more covert narcissism in a nine or in a four, and a more overt version of it in maybe threes or sevens or eights. And so that's why I walked through the Enneagram in that book to
Yeah.
sort of say, this is how it looks different. It's going to look like lawyerly perfectionism in
Mm.
a one, or what Michael Cusick calls benevolent narcissism in a
Mhm.
two, and an achievement orientation in a three, and so on and so forth. It looks different for each number.
Mhm. So with
Yeah.
benevolent narcissism, I assume that's similar to what I call codependent narcissism. Is it
Hmm.
kinda along those lines what
Yeah.
benevolent would be?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think there you have the sense that you're yeah, you're dependent on me for for your well-being. I've got to come through for you. There's a sort of savior
Mhm.
complex for Enneagram twos, right?
Mhm.
And yet there's this sense that I'm doing this for your good. I'm a benevolent person, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we can, each one of these is a mask in a sense, right? And so we can sort of hide behind this way of presenting ourselves
Mhm.
in the world.
Mhm.
I'm doing this for good. Why
Yeah.
could you possibly critique it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet we miss the undercurrent of of that sort of need to be a savior, or that need to be needed, that you
Mhm.
see in an Enneagram too.
Which is always a red flag for shame, right? When someone says, "I need to be needed," and this is what's so hard for dependent stance for Enneagram twos, because they are beautiful, amazing people. But when you learn as a child to read the room, emotions, and be what we call an empath, where you and I just know they're stuck in a fawning trauma response, like they
Yeah.
have the lens of how they figured out how to feel safe. When you get around healthy people don't respond well to someone
Hmm.
thinking that the Enneagram 2 knows what's best for them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an identity crisis, huge identity crisis.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And each one of us, when we face the shadow side of
Yeah.
our Enneagram type, faces an identity crisis,
Mhm.
right? I'd be
Mhm.
curious, how do you experience that as an eight?
Yeah, great question. I haven't felt like I really experienced it, but right now, my wife and I are in Suzanne Stabille's Enneagram cohort.
Yeah.
And there's something about being in that room with 41 other people who are Enneagram savvy and
Hmm.
understand that it's such Enneagram is such a spiritual journey, right? It's about
Yeah.
transformation. And being in that, like Suzanne Stabile said, that eights think they're the best until they don't. And I was like, "Pfft." And now I get why she said that. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
my awareness got heightened.
Yeah.
The fact that I move against people in the name of social
Yeah.
justice and hurt others and don't even
Yeah.
realize it
Yeah.
has just had a spotlight put
Yeah.
on it. And so that's what's
Yeah.
happening to me is that's the
Yeah.
identity crisis that's happening, that I actually have feelings. I just don't have awareness of what's happening to me
Yeah.
or to you.
Yeah. Yeah. My best friend is an eight, and I remember back in 2009, 2010, we were talking about the Enneagram, and he said, "You fours, you feel so much shame. I don't feel any shame."
Mm.
And I said, "I don't know how long it'll take, but I will find shame in you, Kyle." And it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. We sat in his office, and he said, "There's so much shame
Yeah.
underneath. I just
Yeah.
never knew, and now I have access to it."
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that we get to be on our own journey to get there. It is difficult
Yeah.
to recognize that I've hurt people to get to this point. Like the
Yeah.
people I didn't realize I was slapping and stabbing as I went to get to here, and that it's just part of my
Yeah.
motivation commitment now to have,
Yeah.
a continued heightened awareness. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give to each other and to ourselves is awareness.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
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 What are you
Mhm.
most aware of when it comes to being a self-preserve for? What's been the thing that a heightened
Yeah.
awareness or something really started shifting you?
Yeah, I would say a few things as I've paid attention over the years, and this is where so many of us have benefited from Siegel and Kurt Thompson
Yeah.
and their work of turning our attention on ourselves even when it's hard.
Yeah.
What I notice is a deep need for belonging,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
a deep question about my sense of worth,
Mhm.
um, and I would say a sense that whatever it is, it's never enough. So, like an
Mhm.
abiding sense of restlessness. And I have to
Mhm.
be aware of those three things in everything I do, because I will chase after. I will chase after belonging. I will chase after worth. I will chase after enoughness in all
Mhm.
kinds of different ways.
Yeah,
And if I'm not aware, right, and so
yeah.
it'll just come out. It'll come out in ways that impact, if not harm, my
Mhm.
wife, my kids, people I
Mhm.
work with. And so, and those, I think with the Enneagram, these are often things that are sort of humming beneath. Uh, so your attention, it's not just sort of like an obvious, I'm just going to pay attention and I'll just, no, that this took me years to discover the
Yeah,
undercurrent and
yeah.
to realize how much these questions, these needs underneath have animated how I've lived my life.
Mhm, mhm. And this might be just because I'm about to do a sermon on this in a couple weeks, but what I've
Mhm.
really seen as a psychotherapist and someone who looks at the things through the lens of Jesus is has to be unearthed, what's humming underneath is people's chronic disappointment.
Yeah.
People's
Yeah.
incredible fear of being a disappointment
Mm-hmm.
or experiencing some
Mm-hmm.
disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I love you speaking of that, but what I've learned is that once we
Yeah.
realize that we're hiding behind that so much fear of being disappointed, that we realize we actually are disappointed in our parents or certain people
Yeah.
or our spouse, and there's a
Yeah.
path of freedom once that's recognized.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels really universal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think those of us who do the work, I mean, we sit with people every day who experience this. And I think part of our work is to take them to the deeper story and
Mhm.
to recognize that there is that primal disappointment, that
Mhm.
primal sense of grief, maybe even
Yeah.
that their parents are disappointed in them,
Right.
and that's core stuff. Like when you get there,
Mhm.
that's like bedrock stuff, and
Mhm.
you're often sitting in sacred tears with people.
Mhm. Yeah, and needing that level of trust and compassion and rapport to really
Mhm.
look at it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
completely. Yeah, it was such a
yeah.
big thing for me in my own journey of, because I'm such a disappointment to my vulnerable narcissistic mother. I'm a huge disappointment.
Mhm.
And then I realized, oh, I'm disappointed in her. It really became okay.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, and so I was
yeah,
so
that's right.
hyper fixated on the fact that
Yeah,
I was a disappointment. I
yeah,
failed to say, well, I'm disappointed in the fact that that I didn't get mothered in a
yeah.
nurturing way. And then there's
Yeah,
shame
that's
in
the
that.
work, right?
That's the word.
Yeah, that's the work because I think we'll put it on us early on, but because our parents have to be infallible,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we'll project onto them, goodness and perfection and all these kinds of
Mhm.
things. And it's amazing in the work that we do, whether you're 25 or 45 or 65,
Yeah.
when people recognize this for the first time, like, I'm really disappointed in my
Yeah.
mom. She missed me in
Yeah.
core ways I wasn't delighted in,
Mhm.
whatever it might be. That that's a painful revelation,
It is.
because you live for so many years
Yeah.
absorbing all the disappointment. It must have
Mhm.
been me.
Mhm. Yeah, and to be in that moment, Chuck, of realizing that we're breathing in and embodying, which causes disembodiment, the disappointment, and when we put it where it belongs, then we belong.
Hmm.
Right? Like there's
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
so beautiful that happens, but if I'm so scared to face that disappointment, that's when I walk around the promised land. That is where the behavior
Yeah.
is there, right?
Yeah, that's
Constantly.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Because we can sort of offload that. That's something that mom needs to own. It's not about me, and we
Mhm.
can. I wrote this self-published little Lenten devotional years ago called
Mhm.
"Falling into Goodness," and I
Mhm.
believe, like, there's a sense that we fall into the goodness, into the ground of our being, into that
Mhm.
sense that we're held and we're loved,
Mhm.
infinitely, and that's that it does take working through some of this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
recognizing that I don't have to carry that burden any
Yeah.
longer. I don't have to, bear the curse of my mother's disappointment
Yeah.
any longer. I can put
Yeah.
that back where it belongs.
That's right. Someone else's story doesn't have to add to our story anymore.
No,
Yeah, that's
no.
huge. Is part of that path for you? Because I know you're very into contemplative prayer, right?
Yeah.
Um, will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I contemplative prayer is, like many resources, a tool in my
Mhm.
toolbox. It's not
Mhm.
everything,
Right.
but it's been an important piece for me, because silence and solitude has been
Mm.
an important piece of my own spiritual journey.
Mhm.
There was a lot of noise in my childhood,
Mm.
and I grew up on Long Island, New York. I used to have a thick New York accent, so
Really?
I bet you would like that,
Yeah, I
bringing
wouldn't know
that
what the
to.
hell you were saying. I would.
But and it always felt like my family was loud, and of course I was a highly sensitive kid,
Mm.
and so I do think finding my way to silence, and places of solitude was really important, not least for my nervous system. So
Yeah.
on a nervous system level, right,
Yeah.
there's that sense of this just feels really good,
Mm.
and then I grew up in a time and in a context where there was a lot of theological certainty, and everyone had their T's crossed and their I's dotted, and
Mhm.
we knew who the bad guys were and the who the good guys were. And we were always, by the way, the good guys who had the right theology,
That's
and
right.
we were all guys, by the way, too, because and so um, and and so I think. I think the mystics, the contemplative tradition, blew that out of the
Mm,
water.
mm,
Because
mhm.
when you dive down into the contemplative Christian tradition, you find all kinds of interesting
Mhm.
people
Yes.
who believe all kinds of interesting things and have all kinds of interesting practices,
Yeah.
and who say all kinds of interesting things about God that did not fit my tidy little
Right.
certainty paradigm, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and then in the silence, like you allow yourself to be taught. And
Mm,
I had a lot of words early on as a young
mm,
pastor, as a young seminarian,
mhm.
uh, and you just allow yourself to receive, and that's a good place to be in. I'm also mindful with particular clients that silence isn't helpful. In fact, for
Mhm,
their bodies, silence
mhm.
is really activating, and
Right.
so I'm not going to sort of offer this one size fits all, like everyone should
Yeah.
practice contemplative prayer, because it can be really activating for some folks.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Yeah, because where Suzanne told us to do 20-minute contemplative sits, and so what I
Hmm.
do are 5-minute contemplative stands. And so while I'm getting ready and I'm standing there, I will listen to James Finley. I'll listen to like a 5-minute, thing,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm going to do. Like
yeah,
anything beyond that right now in my life is
yeah.
not going to happen. It's not going to be good for my autonomic nervous system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. My friend Kyle, my Enneagram
yeah.
8 friend, he and I, we've taught a bit on the Enneagram over the years. For years, I've been talking about practices, the spiritual practices of different numbers on the Enneagram, and I
Mhm.
think they do look different. And
Yeah,
Kyle would say, walking the Camino, because he's
yeah.
such an embodied person, walking the Camino has been very important for him, because he
Mhm.
needs to feel the ground beneath his
Right.
feet. He needs to be
Yeah,
kind of pulsing along,
yeah,
whereas he's like, I don't know how you can just sit,
yeah,
Giant, and just be quiet.
yeah.
And so, for him, he needs to be out in nature. There needs to be thunder rumbling in the background.
Mhm.
It allows his
Mhm.
big body and his
Mm.
any Enneagram 8 energy to feel like it's being held in a larger energy. And I don't
Mhm.
relate to that.
Right.
So it's really interesting how,
Yeah.
I mean, I love that you're doing Suzanne's
Yeah.
program, because I
Yeah.
mean, I just think she's, in many ways, I mean, she's sort of I think the sage behind a lot of the work that's come out over
Yes.
these last number of years that perhaps other people even take credit for, but Suzanne's the sort of the bright light, the sage behind it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much is. I think one story, because I know you know Richard Rohr, and his work is exceptional, and so, but
Yeah.
I love Suzanne shared with us that when she met Richard Rohr, he said, "Spend 5 years studying the Enneagram and keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Don't
That's
say a
good.
word." And then at five
Yeah.
years, she was allowed to start teaching it.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of
Yeah.
something for 5 minutes, right? And so she's like the
Yeah.
dedication that they
Yeah.
have, which is why to
Yeah.
me they're the mystics, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Because it's a sacred tool. And when
Hmm.
we talk about these things, these are weighty things, right? I mean,
Hmm.
when we talk about people's lives and their stories, and connect the Enneagram type to it, and
Hmm.
look at shadow sides and things like that. I
Hmm.
mean, we better be really cautious and really
Yeah.
careful. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a cadence, and this is why it's so beautiful in a therapeutic environment that it has to be based on where your patient, your client is, not on where
hmm,
I want them. Because the minute I do that, it's about me, and
yeah.
this
That's
is a
right.
sacred space where it actually gets to be about them. Even if only 2 minutes of the conversation, the 50-minute session, is
Yeah,
allowed for them to sit and be connected to themselves,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's so good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's one of,
100%.
if I remember correctly, like your wholeheartedness book, isn't that more about that? About how we don't know how to be in our coherent story to be whole because of the
Yeah,
busyness.
yeah. That's exactly it.
Mhm.
It's this idea that we live these divided lives, these fragmented lives. We're
Yeah.
pulled in all sorts of different directions. I've been very influenced by internal family
Yes.
systems over the years, but
Yes.
but and that goes back to the early 2000s. But even before that, there was a woman named Elizabeth O'Connor. She was a pastor who was writing in the 60s, 70s, during that tumultuous time of the late 60s
Mhm.
politically, at a church called Church of Our Savior in Washington, D.C., where a lot of senators and politicians
Ah,
would go debating about the Vietnam War. It was a tense time, an anxious time. And she led this retreat. A book emerged out of it called Our Many Cells, but it was really a retreat on inviting people to look at their fragmentation. And
yeah.
so today we would call these parts.
Yes.
We would name these parts as
Yeah.
as well, some people call them subpersonalities, but
Mhm.
adaptive
Mhm.
parts of us that have learned to cope in particular kinds of
Mhm.
ways. Um, but she put words to this even back 50 years ago or so,
Mm.
and she was really channeling the contemplative tradition that we're all, as St. Augustine said, scattered, pulled in
Yeah.
these different directions, and
Yeah.
long for wholeness. And so part of the work is, and by the way, now we have the movie Inside Out to teach us things
Yes.
like this, right?
Right.
So um,
Influenced by IFS as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
right. So the question is, here's the attention piece again. How do we pay attention to these
Mm.
scattered and fragmented parts of ourselves and befriend them? Which, by the way, was the exact opposite that I got in my Christian tradition, where it was
Mm.
like I had to put to death anything inside of
Yes.
me. Versus, I want to get curious about my envy,
Yeah.
about my perfectionism,
Right.
about my not enoughness, about all these different things, and
Mhm.
see what I have to learn.
You know, I still am just amazed when someone like you, based on who you are, where you are, did not have to do this work. Like you would have fit in nicely, at least superficially, into this mold of this is what a Christian
Yeah,
looks like. This is the person
yeah,
who gets promoted within the church. This is the person who gets to have a mega
yeah,
church, right? And that you
yeah,
have somehow pivoted from that, and not only that, like really done the work, welcome the idea
yeah,
of a spiritual awakening versus the requirements of a religion that would have honored
yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
impressive.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, uh, a couple of things. I had that professor who I mentioned
Yeah.
who noticed that tendency and called me out.
Mm,
Um, I also think that, as a 4, I probably wouldn't have been comfortable for very long in the
mhm.
status quo.
Yeah. True.
I've
Good
always
point. Good point.
been. Yeah, yeah, and so I think even within institutions, and I work for an institution now, and I'm always one of those within the institution who's kind of butting up against the leadership and
Yeah.
asking questions, and
Yeah.
and I have their trust. I mean, we have good conversations, um, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that back in the late 1990s, when I was a pretty heady, certain seminary student, I was in a course over in England, in fact, where I was invited to read the mystics, and I was
Mm,
invited to this larger tradition. I was given a book by a mentor, by Richard Rohr, back in 1997,
hmm.
and exposed to that. And that was all. I remember back then, because I was raised in a pretty conservative, reformed tradition.
Right.
That sense of like, we first of all, I can't be reading Catholics and a Catholic woman.
Yeah.
And now I say my favorite 16th century reformer is Saint Teresa of Avila, right? And
Mhm.
I've created this film about Saint Teresa, called Wild Country of the Heart. I mean, she's
Mm,
so yeah. I mean, I think once you find yourself in that contemplative stream, you realize that uh, it's a much more spacious land, and I was living in a
mhm.
very, very small and certain
Mhm.
world, and
Mhm.
I'm so grateful for people who called me out of that.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful too. The magnitude that you've had and the multitude of people that you've influenced,
Mhm.
from that. And, I'm always happy to sit with anybody wherever they are, but there is something so connective to sit with somebody who could have stayed in the place that rejects me and
Yeah,
chooses to be in a place of self-acceptance, which will automatically include accepting me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that, and this from the IFS work.
Mhm.
You tend to reject the people, the things that you reject in yourself first,
Right.
right? And so as you
True.
do the inner work, and as you discover all these places of
Mhm.
shame and disappointment, all the things, right?
Mhm.
Rage, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, so as I'm growing in self-acceptance, and self-love, self-compassion, it's really not that hard to
Yeah.
love people who my tribe said that I wasn't supposed to love,
Right.
who were other, but I
Right.
think that's the way of Jesus, right?
Yes, yes, it
So,
is. Well, see if you can speak
yeah,
into this. So this is one of my biggest issues, right? And it goes into spiral dynamics, and I don't want to be stuck in sympathetic part of my system and being against
yeah,
people and fighting and feeling better than and all the
yeah,
things you and I can understand. And I
yeah,
understand the brain, I understand all of it, right? But to have people who say they love me are going to vote in a way that I could have my marriage dissolved, that
yeah,
causes me to have to look around as I walk down the street, think I'm going to be attacked, like
yeah,
my job is working on getting out of the dualistic thinking, expecting them to accept me, that I get to accept me. But it's hard
Yeah.
for so many people right now to find that contemplative place, that spacious place to sit where other people aren't a threat to us, and yet we're living
Yeah.
in a reality that there is a threat.
We talk about this as a threat, so that automatically means that there's something that we're neurocepting,
Yeah, good point.
that our
Yeah.
nervous system is paying attention to, that
Mm-hmm.
that says, danger, danger, danger. You better protect yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm sensing, Kim, is that
Mm-hmm.
there's not a like this is a real threat to your marriage, to your sense of identity, right? So
Right.
like, um, at the same time, I mean, I think so many of us do live in these sympathetic states of fight,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, we've got to crush the other side, and
Mm-hmm.
when you live in sympathetic fight, you can't live in anything other than an us them,
Yeah, that's right.
where there's got to be an enemy, right? But then others cope by living in fawn, which is
Yeah.
to say, we just need to be charitable, we need to be
Yeah.
kind, we need to be nice, we just all need to come to the table. If we just talk to one another,
Yeah.
everything would be okay. And that's a way of coping as well, right?
Right.
And so I do think that when we're in ventral, when we're connected, when we're
Mm-hmm.
in our window of tolerance, when we're
Mm-hmm.
anchored in our true self and grounded, there is a sense that we can look at the world as the prophets of old did, as Jesus did, and name evil,
Yeah.
name what harms, name
Mm-hmm.
injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we don't do it from a way that is reactive, out of our sympathetic system. We do it
Mm-hmm.
from a place, well, maybe even from a place of genuine grief at the injustice,
Mm-hmm.
and with the sense that uh, that perhaps too we can't control it all. Like, November's going to come and go, and I can tweet 15 times a day about a
Mm-hmm.
certain presidential candidate, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't control the outcome.
Right.
But it's part of my sympathetic nervous system that says, but if you do it, maybe there's a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how can I remain anchored and then do
Mm-hmm.
what I'm being called to do out of a grounded and rooted place,
Mm-hmm.
which is to say that's not inert, like that,
Mm-hmm.
that requires action.
Well, thank you for the way you said that. And just a reminder for all of us, because it really is about being anchored and doing what we have to do to be in ventral vagal and be grounded, and to know we
Yeah.
can't always live there, can't always stay there, but
Mhm.
intentionality around being there. I know when I'm doing that, I'm doing what I do hope that others will do, but I don't want to be
Yeah.
dependent on whether or not they
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a hard place to be, and I appreciate you spending a couple minutes talking into that, because I
Yeah.
think we need to keep remembering that the outcome is not, we're not, when we get hyper fixated on the outcome, it becomes an idol, and that it's more about the
Yeah.
process, that they're
Yeah.
that we're in this together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, one more thing that I'd say, and
Mm,
um, is I think I have the tendency as a white male to think that I have more power than I do, and it's
mm,
been listening to colleagues of color who
mm.
are like, "Oh, we're aware of the long arc of justice. Like we
Yeah.
have." And what we've had to do, I love Barbara Holmes' work.
Mhm,
She's with the Center for Action and Contemplation, has a podcast. She's a Black woman writing in the contemplative tradition, and she talks about the kind of grounded practices of the contemplative tradition, among men and women who are enslaved, right?
mhm,
Whether it be
mm,
lament songs or whatever it was, with this
mhm.
sense of, we can't control everything that's happening around us, but we can do our work. They wouldn't have talked about it back then, but we can do what we can do to be grounded,
Mhm.
knowing that there's a hope beyond some sort of immediate remedy.
Yeah.
I'm the one who dupes myself into thinking that, because I'm, the white male, that I have this power to.
Mm,
So I don't know how that strikes you, but I've just, it's really helped me to try to listen over these last few years. Um, Even at, colleagues of color who are like, Chuck, you're a control freak. Like
uh,
you actually think that, you can change some sort of outcome by, let us teach you about the long game.
mhm. You know what? What you actually did for me was is a glimmer of hope tremendously. It's the idea of knowing that when we don't suffer silently and we just interact with people that are safe, and you're definitely a safe person, that I can hear like a new name, Barbara Holmes. That's somebody else I can tap into. Like I'm
Yeah.
ready and open to learn and expand. And it's the restriction that causes us pain, not the expansion.
Hmm.
And so just
Hmm.
knowing like when we are actually awake and we pay attention, like moments like that happen. And now I have
Yeah.
someone else who can feed me so I can go feed
Yes.
others.
Yeah. Yeah. And even you mentioned spiral dynamics, but even
Mhm.
Ken Wilber wrote an essay after the 2016 election saying, in a sense, this is probably an evolutionary course correction
Mm.
because those who thought they were so enlightened and so progressive got a little too cocky,
Ah,
and I wanted to throw that little essay across the room when I
mm.
read it because I'm like, I don't want some sort of evolutionary course correction,
Right.
like there's justice and there's injustice, and damn it, I need it now,
Hmm.
and yet he's like, so now the question is, what is there for us who are in the green, I guess, in the spiral
Yes.
dynamic, and
Right.
what is it for us to learn? Because maybe we became tribal.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, Kim. I mean, it feels like so much learning, right? But to have
Yes.
teachers like Barbara Holmes, and
Mm.
I came to trust her because I trusted Richard Rohr, and
Right.
he had recommended her book a long time ago.
Mm.
So yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And, I love Kim Wilber. I love transpersonal psychology. Like it
Hmm.
changed me in the sense because it gave a word to what I was already doing. Because I'm
Hmm.
all about the intersection of theology and psychology,
Yes.
and to
Yes.
find like there's already shaping around that. And so again, it's just that constant reminder, and why we're throwing out names and ideas and modalities and things like that for people today is
Yep.
we can't stay right here and be okay.
Yes.
We just can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And even I think my one of my greatest teachers, Saint Teresa of Avila,
Mhm.
in the interior castle, which is kind of a developmental psychology, spirituality.
Mm.
When she gets to the seventh dwelling, you just get the sense that uh, you don't need to be as in control as you thought
Mm.
you had to be. She says,
Mm.
it's okay to pray for your little circle of friends and not have to save the whole world, and you get the sense that she's lived a good long life and she's probably tried to do it on her own, probably
Mhm.
tried to save the world.
Mm.
And there's an open-handedness as she gets into this, as she discerns this seventh dwelling in this more
Mm.
spacious place, and I realize I'm far from that because I still want to control. I still tend to live in a very small world where I think if I just work hard enough, I can control the outcome.
Yeah, sure. And I definitely the idea, especially as an eight, the circle that I'm in is enough versus I need everybody to hear, which can sound
Mhm.
very narcissistic in itself, right? Which goes back to we're all on the
Mhm.
spectrum some way, but
Yeah, right.
just knowing like wanting people to know love the way I know love, right? Like a
Mhm.
recognizing that is
Mhm.
can be just as absurd as people who define love differently than I do want me to love the way they love, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it comes from the same consciousness at some
Mhm,
level, right? Which is a
mhm.
consciousness that is geared toward control. Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah, I think you and I are probably in a similar place. We're learners, right? And we're
mhm,
constantly sort of faced with our own
mhm.
the ways in which we're participating in the very systems we're critiquing,
Right,
so
right, right. Well,
yeah,
and because I can hear the polyvagal influence, I can hear window of tolerance,
yeah,
Dan Siegel, like all of that, and because these
yeah,
are things that bring an expansion and a level of liberation that,
yeah,
in religion or just in psychology that you get taught in school, you cannot get to liberation.
no,
Yeah. What's the
no,
thing that you wish you had learned in school studying? Because I know you LPC and then went on to get your PhD. What's the
yeah.
thing, particularly in your master's level, that you wish you had been taught at that level about what therapy really is that you didn't get taught?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think those of us who were taught in, for me, the mid to late 90s, we did not have the benefit of the Siegels and I
Mhm,
guess, well, Judith Herman was beginning to
mhm,
write back then, but the work of Vanderkolk, which has really led to a lot of the other work, Levine and Porges and
mhm.
all these folks. I really love Janina Fisher's work, but this more
Yeah,
embodied way of understanding the work.
yeah,
For us, it was talk therapy. It was
mhm,
if I could if I and a similar theme here. If I could sit with someone long enough and get enough details from their story,
mhm,
I could find that event, the smoking gun, the thing that
mhm.
happened that makes you the way you are.
Yeah,
And my first therapist did that with me, and in fact, it was a massive miss. But
Ah,
she threw the dart. She thought she was close to the center, and it missed. And she named something from my childhood that didn't happen, but she thought did happen. And
mm,
I realized back then that what we had learned was a kind of talk therapy that was really invested in some good things, getting to know a person's story, really honoring the sacredness of the relationship.
mhm.
Um, but a lot on self-awareness, but nothing on self-regulation. And
That's
I
right.
often talk about those two things side by side today, where I was a self-aware person when I went into the hospital in Mexico
Mm,
and my system was septic, in the sense that I knew a lot of things about my story. I mean, if you sat
mhm,
down with me, you'd be like, "Oh, Chuck really knows things about his family of origin, things that his mom did and dad did, and he's confronted his mom and dad, and he knows his Enneagram type, and he's into all sorts of interesting things,
mm.
and he is a profoundly dysregulated human being."
Right.
Um, I had very little sense of what was going on within me, and so that's been my more recent work. The next book that I have coming out is called Healing What's Within, because
Mhm,
in many ways it was that next step of the journey
mhm,
of recognizing our embodiedness, understanding neuroscience or nervous system. Siegel was probably the first person I read that gave me some window into this new way of
mhm.
thinking. And of course, Kurt has been a huge mentor and influence in
Yeah,
the work. And then the rest followed.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just so true. There's so much. Like, if I could teach a class, I might create this to teach baby therapists what it really means and what to do. Because even though I think the knowledge is out there about polyvagal and window tolerance,
Yeah.
still the ability to create space and let it be about the person in front of you without self-abandonment, right? Because
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
like connection to myself is vital, right? Like but the idea of all the things that you have brought to the table, what in particular is within the new book, Healing What's Within, that feels vulnerable for you?
Well, for the first time, I told uh, my story, or at least some of my story, not all of it, but I was really hesitant to say much about my own story in the narcissism book, and
Mhm.
there's not very much in other things that I've written. And I think there has been that sense of not wanting to center my own story, particularly as a white man, and
Mm.
like, here we go again. Look at me,
Mhm.
because my experience is all of your experiences, right? And
Right.
um, it was my it was a couple of editors, two women who I respect a lot, who said, "Hey, Chuck, you can be vulnerable without centering your story, and in fact, it's really important as you write this particular book."
Mm.
For a sense of credibility, for you to be vulnerable as you talk about
Mhm.
um, when I got fired from my first ministry
Mm.
position. I was pushing up against a senior pastor who was theologically complementarian, and my views were by this time changing on lots of different
Mm.
things, and we came to a head, and I was fired. And that was a profoundly, particularly as a four, painful experience, and a self-alienating experience that led eventually to me ending up in the hospital. And
Mm.
I wanted to tell some version of that story, that even someone like me, who's a therapist, who's doing the work, um, can become profoundly self-disconnected, alienated,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, I tell more of my story in there, because I think it's important for. Uh, I, I do think that there's a sense of responsibility I feel now, um, as as someone. I don't have a lot of influence, but within whatever circle of influence I might have,
Mm.
as a male, as a white male, as someone who has had some leadership in the church, to say I duped myself into thinking that I had it figured out, that I knew
Mm.
myself, and I was the one asking, "What's my impact? How do you experience me?" And I was still profoundly unaware of my dysregulation and
Mhm.
its impact. And
Mhm.
so there's always more work to be done. And I'm, as you know, constantly inviting people to that work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always about do the work, but it is something different. I found that as a psychotherapist that's public, and at least in my area, we all know each other.
Hmm.
It's a small area. That
Yeah.
honestly, most people are not open to me having a bad day,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah.
Much less the unresolved trauma that still resides within that I didn't know was
Yeah.
there, that marriage has allowed to be like, "Hi, we're over here." Yeah,
How long have you been married?
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that, yeah, that just brings stuff up, right?
it
And it's
does.
like, there it is, and I can't
Yeah,
ignore it.
yeah,
And yet we're all still in process, right? And
yeah.
whoever said that we had to arrive,
Mhm,
that was another piece when I was turning 50. I was like,
mm.
I should be there by now.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
oh, such a myth, right?
yeah. Love the restraints and constraints that we place on ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've said numerous times over, because I got married at 50, and if we had married each other, we're safe people for each other, and that's why I can do the deeper work with her. If
Yeah.
I'd married her at 25, 30, we would already be divorced. Like there was I was dysregulated every day, as you said a
Yeah.
few minutes ago, thinking this is regulation,
Yeah.
right? Like I love in
Yeah.
polyvagal, we talk about the home away from home is that like fight response is people's home, but it's not called to be our home. But that's where we live
No.
so much, we don't know that that's not home.
Yeah, that's the only reality we know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, when that's disrupted, people. I mean, the clients I work with, I love the language of home, by the way, and I use that, the
Mhm,
spiritual home, the
mhm.
physiological home, because we get pulled into sympathetic storm and dorsal fog. But
Yeah.
when you know this when you work with clients who've lived in sympathetic for so long, and they begin to get a taste of some ventral goodness, like
Mm.
some will sabotage it because it's
Yes.
like, no, I'm not worth that,
Yeah.
or I can't possibly have that goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll throw this out. This is the best way I can explain this to people is that when you're sympathetic, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that it's like a host of Harvard and Yale graduate attorneys who've been
Mhm.
practicing for like 30 years, and they will bring evidence to you of why you need to stay right where you are.
Yeah,
And so the
there you go.
attorney in Ventral Vagal just graduated from Charlotte Law School, which I think went under, by the way. Barely has practiced, barely been in the courtroom, and that's who I have to strengthen. That's who is I'm now calling on, who doesn't have the practice in being grounded, doesn't know that
Yeah.
you don't have to be in the
Yeah.
fight. You can just be where you are. Like it's all new,
Yeah.
which is why we have to have a lens of compassion towards ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think's influenced you the most? Which is, in a sense, unfair question, right? Because all of it's so
Yeah.
important, all the work. But
Yeah.
just like the Enneagram, polyvagal, what's influenced the most for you to have an understanding of true self?
Oh, wow. Um, That's a really good question. It's hard to say. I think that at the core, probably early on, it was Henry Nouwen's writings, who we
Mhm.
haven't talked about at
Yeah,
all, because
yeah.
there was an invitation to something in Nouwen's writings that I had never heard before, that I knew was real. Later it became Rohr's writing. I mean, I devoured Rohr for
Yeah.
more than a decade. I mean, just
Mhm,
everything. Listened to him all the time
mhm.
when I was in San Francisco. I think that's the only thing I read or listened to for such a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's all been profoundly impactful, in its own way, and it'd be hard to say, but I mean, polyvagal has been so very helpful. IFS
Mhm,
back in the early, I mean, the IFS is still like one of my primary tools in my
mhm.
toolbox. It's not
Yeah.
my only one. There are some like purists, IFS purists. I'm
Yeah.
not one, but
Right.
yeah, but yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, Kim. I'll
Mhm.
be thinking about that
Yeah,
more.
you can chew on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
I would tell you my claim to fame, besides knowing you, is that I trained in internal family systems so long ago that Dr. Schwartz did the training, and he commented on my intellect. That I was very intelligent, and I tell that
Mm,
story all the time for people to know that Dr. Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, said I was smart. So
yeah,
that's my claim to fame right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least a part of you is really smart, right?
Somebody in there is smart, right? We'll take a
Yeah.
part. Listen, I'll take anything.
Like,
I'll take
is he
any compliment.
complimenting me, or is he complimenting this
It's
part of me
the
that's
part that
out
came up.
and, in the
Mhm.
lead right now? So,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
But that's a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
I know one of my first IFS therapist was one of those early adopters, Jay Early, out in San Francisco,
Uh-huh.
who had been with Richard in the early days, and I felt like I was like, one step away, from the giant. I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
getting it from one of the
Right.
real ones.
Right, right. That's right. That's right. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you so much. I'm gonna put you on the hot seat for just a couple of seconds. Just throw some simple questions at you, and we'll just see what comes to mind first? All right. Simple questions. All right. You're in the hot seat. All right. What surprises people the most about you?
Oh, what surprises them is that uh, was uh, I was on this path to getting a PhD in New Testament studies, and
Mm,
I was a pretty I was a reformed kid. I was a young, restless, reformed, aiming to be a biblical studies PhD.
uh-huh.
And because they're like, you're a therapist and you're such a tender-hearted guy, and
Mm,
you were that kind of guy. Yeah, so that
mhm.
surprises people
Yeah, I
that I was
bet.
often ready to do that PhD. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What surprises you the most about you?
Um, I, yeah. Oof. Well, this is kind of maybe a vulnerable one, but I
Mm,
think my resilience in the face of pretty overwhelming anxiety over the years. Like
yeah.
I've had a lot of anxiety, panic attacks from very early years,
Mhm.
um, bad migraines. There's a story behind that, as there always is, right?
Right?
Um, and thought this is surely going to be done by the time I'm 30, 35,
Uh,
40,
uh,
45, 50. And I remember hearing, who was it? Barbara Brown Taylor, I
uh-huh.
think,
I love
preaching.
her.
Do you know Barbara Brown
Oh, yeah, I
Taylor?
love her.
Uh, and she was preaching, and it was so good. And she said, you know, and I'm just so grateful that I get to speak to you. And today went pretty well, thanks be to God, and thanks be to Xanax. And and I it was a really important moment
Mm,
for me, because there's probably a bottle of Xanax within,
mhm,
100 feet of me right now.
mhm.
Not that I'm taking Xanax every day or anything like that,
Right.
but like I've had I've had significant anxiety and panic
Yeah,
for a long, long time. That probably surprised people about me.
yeah.
That would be one thing. But what surprises me about me, I guess, is what you're asking, is
Uh-huh.
uh, I I don't think I knew that I had this resilience
Mm,
within me, and the best sense of the word resilience, right? Because
yeah.
sometimes we call pulling yourself up by your bootstraps
True.
resilience, but like
That's very
this
true.
deep sense that I've been able to find my way to center and grow in the ways and do the things, frankly, that I've gotten to do,
Mhm.
even in the midst of many years of therapy trying to address this anxiety, but the anxiety still being there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And to me, it's so relatable, right? It's such
Yeah.
a point of connection with you because it's not
Yeah.
like I became a therapist and my panic attack stopped,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's not
Or
how it
became a
works.
Christian or became a
Right.
whatever,
That's right. I didn't.
whatever.
The spiritual bypassing didn't work, everybody.
No,
Yeah.
no, it
Yeah.
doesn't. And the trauma work and the,
Mhm.
I like you probably like me, I've done IFS, and
Mhm.
most recently Safe and Sound protocol, the new
Mm.
Porges
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
protocol, the newer, and you expect all these things at some point. It's like, yeah, that's gonna be the
Yeah.
thing. And I
Yeah.
do think that at some level, I know that my anxiety is always going to accompany me, and
Mm.
yet, um, I think you sort of learn through those sufferings too.
Mhm.
I think I am more empathetic, tender, vulnerable, attuned because of my anxiety in some ways,
Yeah. There
So
is an attunement
yeah,
that happens with that. Yeah. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
All right. Last question. What is your favorite binge worthy show?
Oh, goodness. What was my favorite binge-worthy show? That's such a good question. Um, I'm scanning like 20 years worth of shows right now, Kim.
Mm.
Um, it's gotta be Ted Lasso.
Ah,
Um,
beautiful show. So well done.
yeah. I skipped the first season, and because you're asking binge worthy,
Yeah.
and I ended up binging it, and, yeah, it was moving in a way that I didn't expect it
Did
to
not
be,
expect.
and hopeful,
Yeah.
and talk about, like, IFS externalized, and the love for the parts, and, the
Mhm.
parts that we tend to other, and, yeah, so important and beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And him showing his own panic attack, showing that,
Yeah,
right?
right?
Even that, yeah, so
Yeah,
healing. Yeah,
yeah,
it's so good. Well, thank
yeah.
you. You're my new best friend. Hope you know that. How do
Well,
people get in touch with you? Tell us your Instagram handle. I know your new book is
yeah.
coming out, all that.
Yeah, so, chuckdegroat.net is the website, and then I think pretty much in all the social media stuff, it's like at Chuck DeGroat,
Okay.
DeGroat, and,
Great.
yeah, the new one comes out October 8, and it's called Healing What's Within. And there's a pre-order thing on my website. Depending on when this comes out, people can get a free code for a 2-hour workshop that I do on spiritual abuse,
Oh,
religious trauma, spiritual abuse,
yeah.
and how we heal ourselves and systems. So yeah, there's that out there.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you for being here and sharing
Yeah,
your
thank you.
wisdom and your heart and all the
Yeah,
things.
and you too. Thank you for your work, but yeah, more so for who you are and
Mm,
even how you show up on this. I mean,
mm,
I think you know how it goes.
mm.
You intuit pretty quickly that someone's
Yeah.
safe. So thank you for
Yeah.
being
Oh,
safe and
thank you.
kind and a good question asker.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I received that,
Yeah,
and for it being mutual.
yeah,
All right, everybody.
yeah.
I don't know exactly what you heard today, but I know you heard something that will let you reconnect to who you really are. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Please subscribe, rate, and share. You can find Kim on Facebook or Instagram at kbhoneycutt. To get an autographed copy of Kim's book, visit butyourmotherlovesyou.com. Remember, no matter what, treat yourself well today.